focus on the meaning of the name Yisrael for the land which we call Eretz Yisrael, the land that used to be known as Canaan, now is known as Yisrael. And in this week's parsha, we find many more names. People are being named left and right. Most notably, by Yaakov's sons, every son gets a name, some with explanations. We also find that Yaakov names different places based off his experiences, like in Beit El or in Sukkot. However, Professor Yoel Elitzur points to 5 different issues regarding these place names. So, for the first one, we find that Yaakov might call a place 2 or 3 times. Right? He names Beit El 2 or 3 times. Right? What's going on here? Why does he have to name it 2 or 3 times? So some suggest that he gave it different names each time, but it would seem like Beit El is one name. A second problem is that we might find 2 explanations for one place, like we found last week by Beersheba. Right? Maybe it's named after 7, maybe it's named after an oath. We also find that sometimes the name, like Ruvain, he has an explanation in this week's parsha, but in Sefer Yehoshua, it doesn't have an explanation. Number 4, sometimes the explanation for the name, is after we already know about the place itself. Right? Abraham knew about Beit El, but only in this week's parsha, Yaakov names Beit El. And finally, we find that the names don't always line up with what we might expect. Like for Reuven, see, a boy, right? Leah just gave birth to a son. However, the explanation she gives, Ki ra'ah Hashem be'oni ki ata yehavani ishi, doesn't seem to line up perfectly with the name itself. So, an opening to explaining all this, we can find in the Sforno. The Sforno points out that the name Yehuda seems to have been preceded by the name of Esav's wife, Yehudit, or by Shmuel. Shmuel's name, even though it had an explanation in Sefer Shmuel, was actually the name of one of the Nesiim in the Midbar, Shmuel ben Amihud. So we find that perhaps names, even if they had existed before, were given new meaning later in time. And the Midrash in Bereshit Rabbah gives a very nice expression to this, because it says, Ein shmotan shel shvatim avud lahen, ela chafut lahen. Right? The names of the shvatim weren't necessarily worked and created on their own for them, but they were a cover for them. Which means that what's our goal as a Jewish people when we give names? We're not trying to erase history. We're trying to add new layers to history, to add new meaning to the places and to the people who we know and love. Shabbat Shalom.